All right, welcome to the Explainer. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Today, we've got an absolutely fascinating and honestly super practical journey ahead of us. We're going to unpack this brilliant framework for basically mastering our own minds. We're talking about stepping away from the endless anxiety of overthinking and finally conquering those false assumptions that drag us down literally every single day. If you've ever felt like your own brain is just working against you, spinning these wild tales of worry, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to explore a concept known as the mirror of truth.
Seriously though, have you ever assumed someone was furious with you, only to find out later you were totally wrong? I mean, I definitely have. Someone doesn't text you back right away, or maybe they just give you a weird look in the hallway, and boom, your brain immediately decides, yep, they hate me. Today's explainer explores exactly why our brains automatically generate these negative assumptions, and, way more importantly, how we can actually stop them dead in their tracks using a really simple structured approach.
So, let's get into it. Section 1, the mind's storyteller.
Let's zoom in on a small town and look at a young boy named Ali to see exactly how these mental traps take root so early in our lives. Now, Ali was a great kid, super smart, really kind, but despite all of his wonderful objective qualities, his mind was kind of already wired to expect rejection. He was constantly battling this underlying thought that people simply did not like him. That was his baseline insecurity. And here's the thing, when you carry that kind of baseline insecurity, your brain acts like a hyperactive storyteller, just constantly looking for clues to prove that sad story right. So picture this. One day at school, Ali brightly says hello to his teacher, but the teacher is busy and doesn't answer him. Instantly, Ali's brain jumps to a conclusion. My teacher is angry with me. He didn't pause and think, oh, maybe she just didn't hear me. Nope, he immediately assumed he had done something wrong. And the source material notes that this single, unverified thought absolutely ruined his entire day. He sat there feeling sad for hours over an event that, honestly, happened entirely inside his own head. And this brilliantly illustrates the core problem we all face, doesn't it? Because while Ollie's mind completely invented the assumption that his teacher was angry, the objective reality was totally different. The teacher was actually just worried about a sick family member and simply hadn't heard him say hello. It's crazy. There's this massive, echoing gap between the story Ollie's mind invented and the actual truth of the world around him.
Which brings us to Section 2, the mirror of truth. This is the real turning point of our story. Ollie goes home, heavy-hearted, and tells his grandfather this sad story about his teacher. His grandfather listens, smiles, and asks a devastatingly simple question. Did your teacher tell you she was angry? Ollie replies, well, no. And then the grandfather asks, then how do you know? I just want to take a quick pause right here and let that sink in for a second. Then how do you know? It's such a simple question, but it completely shatters Ollie's assumption. Ollie stayed quiet because he realized he actually didn't know at all. To help Ali really capture this lesson, his grandfather actually hands him a small physical mirror, but he defines it as something much greater. He calls it the mirror of truth. It's basically a special mental mirror used to examine strong automatic thoughts before just blindly accepting them as reality. The grandfather tells Ali that whenever he has a really strong, painful thought, he needs to imagine looking straight into this mirror. And to use this framework, his grandfather tells him he needs to ask 3 specific questions right into that mirror. Number 1, is it true? Number 2, what evidence do I actually have? And number 3, could there be another explanation? So the absolutely crucial point here is that these are the 3 steps you must take whenever a strong negative thought pops up. You don't just sit there and absorb the anxiety. No, you put the thought on trial. You break down that cognitive distortion by demanding real evidence. Moving on to Section 3, common mental traps. Now, zooming out from Ollie's childhood fable, let's jump forward in time. Years pass, and Ollie actually grows up to become a psychologist. He dedicates his entire life to teaching others the very lesson his grandfather taught him. Dr. Ollie teaches that our minds are powerful storytellers. And sure, while they sometimes tell the truth, they frequently make wild assumptions based on our deepest insecurities. They're driven by fear, worry, or past experiences, rather than, actual facts. In his practice, Dr. Ali identifies the primary culprits behind our daily anxiety. These common mental traps include jumping to conclusions, assuming what others think, just like he did as a kid with his teacher, expecting the absolute worst possible outcome, and focusing only on negative events while completely ignoring the positive ones.
Sound familiar at all? These specific mental traps are incredibly common for literally all of us. They're basically the default settings of an unexamined mind. Now, what's really interesting here is the distinction Dr. Ollie makes. He isn't out here pitching blind optimism or toxic positivity, where you just force a happy thought and pretend everything is perfect. Instead, he promotes healthy thinking. That means being curious and checking if your thoughts actually match reality. His psychological framework isn't about slapping a smiley face on a bad situation. It's simply about aligning our internal narrative with objective truth. It's all about clarity. All right, section 4, thoughts are not facts. We arrive now at the climax and the absolute core takeaway of this entire explainer. One day, a student approaches Dr. Ali with a monumental question. They ask, what is the biggest lesson in psychology? Think about that. The student is asking him to distill his entire lifetime of psychological expertise, plus all that wisdom passed down from his grandfather, into one single foundational concept. Dr. Ali smiles and he pulls out that very same old childhood mirror his grandfather gave him. He tells the student, the biggest lesson is that thoughts are not always facts. Before believing every thought, examine it. I mean, wow, it just beautifully ties the childhood fable and the psychological framework together. Just because you think something does not make it real. You have to put it in front of the mirror. So let's wrap this up with the real moral of our story here. Your mind is a wonderful servant, but a very poor master. If you let your mind just run wild, generating stories and assumptions completely unchecked, it's going to master you with fear and anxiety. But if you learn to question your thoughts, to examine them objectively, well, then your mind becomes a wonderful servant that actually helps you understand yourself and the people around you far, far better. I want to leave you with this final, vital question. The next time your mind starts spinning a negative story, will you let it master you, or will you stop and look into the mirror of truth? Will you actually pause and ask yourself, is it true? What is my evidence? Could there be another explanation? The power to control your narrative is entirely in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep seeking the truth, and I'll catch you next time.